Bill Bradley with Coal Black Exotics, Lizard Brain Radio, Saurian Stories podcast, a whole bunch of different things. Questions today that we were going to talk about kind of centered on the Coal Black Exotics stuff for the most part. In that business, my wife and I do educational shows using reptiles, amphibians, and invertebrates. As a business, we've done that since 2012. I've done that since I was in high school. When I went to college, it was a work college, and so my job as a student there was also to take care of their animals and do shows and things like that. So that's where I learned that particular trade, I guess, if you want to call it that, as far as the business goes. And then officially as a business, we both started in 2012. I thought pretty hard about this one. The biggest challenge is a little bit dependent on what kind of event you're doing. So the biggest challenge, if it is a private event where you went to someone's home for a birthday party, or they specifically wanted a reptile show at their personal event. Biggest problem there is usually just individual fears. Or people who are just misinformed about reptiles. There's always going to be a relative who didn't know that I was coming to the party, or if it's always almost always kids that we go to, and they, when they're young, elementary school, they invite their whole class, and so then 20 kids show up. Well, there's no way all 20 are going to be okay with it. Some are scared of the tarantula, some are scared of snakes, and when they're young, they have really hard fear reactions, so they'll scream or, do the kind of exaggerated things. So when your individual private events is way more personalized fear type things, and so you need to be able to work with that. You have to be good with kids. You have to be able to, and especially when adult fears come in, you need to be able to be calm, have that voice cadence. A lot of the things that teachers do, a lot of public speakers do, everybody has a very similar voice cadence to them. It's a thing that I don't know if everyone realizes this, but if you travel around the United States and you turn on the news, most newscasters talk like I talk. They practice speaking like they're from the Midwest because you lack an accent and you lack a lot of inflection that makes you very specific to a place. And so everybody is pretty uniform when they present the information on the news. It's a industry thing for them. That's more of it, is more of the actual calm presentation, because you're probably dealing with individual fears. The biggest challenge when you're working with the public is lack of control, where people will just let their kids go to the festival and run around. Well, little kids don't always follow directions. They walk behind your table, or you have to set things up so they can't get into things. Everything needs to be locked. You just don't have as much control. We do really, really large festivals, thousands of people, and we have a 12 by 20 tent usually, with several tables for display, and large, our giant sulcata, he's in a tote on the ground, and then if there's grassy space, I'll walk around with him or whatever. You have to have at least one person, preferably two, at the table. You have to be watching so nobody opens a thing. Theoretically should be locked so no one can open it. Somebody's always going to knock something over, so you can't do fancy displays that could easily break. You have so much less control than you think. It's a positive thing, but it's kind of a consequence as well of, if you're good at this and you present well and you make people comfortable and they feel safe, and you're working through fears and you're helping people. The people that weren't scared to start, they thought it was cool, automatically go into everything is safe. I can do whatever. I can touch it. I can pet it. This guy knows what he's talking about. Teresa knows what she's talking about. It's totally safe. And then people just do things that don't make sense, like touch things face, or they don't understand. You'll teach about how lizards have eyelids and snakes don't, and you're going through these lessons, and then people want to touch them, and you're like, no, please don't poke a boa constrictor in the eye. You really lack control when you're in large groups of public, and you don't think about that if you're just walking around the pumpkin festival or whatever as a person who is there. When you're the person who has a 15-foot reticulated python on the ground, and then you have a piece of snow fence that's holding back 40 people. It's like, oh, there's a gigantic predator on the ground here, and these monkeys walking around please don't bring small dogs by me. Like all these things, like it's just a lack of control. We go to a lot of places year over year. We have a huge list of libraries that we see every year, Boy Scout groups that we see every year, schools where we go to like a back to school night or like a fall break fun day or whatever, just year over year. And so like we've seen some of these kids grow up. Like we've been doing this long, and like we're on 10 years. So like elementary school kids that were at some of these libraries local to where I live are graduating high school, and like I'm telling them about my friends who are college professors, and we're watching different school groups age out. They definitely, in the places that see us repeatedly, they're excited. Oh, hey, is the rat snake bigger this year? Did that baby change colors? They remember things. And just generally in the public, like at our big public events, we have, I don't know if it's necessarily that people are more okay with it, but people are less likely to voice the negative, I guess. When we first started, we had a lot of people that were on the religious aspect of it, where snakes were evil and different things like that. We actually didn't have very much genuine ignorance, as in like people that were uneducated and killed snakes or did silly things. You had people that didn't know like the specific facts that we teach, or like fun natural history or whatever, but not like I kill all snakes with a lawnmower. Like we really didn't run into that, even at the very beginning. We ran into a lot of people who had a very religious bent to their attitude with reptiles. Invertebrates is a lot more fear-based education for us. It's people that are scared of spiders. And so that usually is one, irrational fear, or genuine ignorance where they lack information and so they don't know. And ignorance we work through easy. That's one of our best things is we give people facts and teach them, and eventually like they're just cool with it because I can logically explain to you how it's safe, or it's okay to hold this, or you can pet this leopard gecko, and so on and so forth. The irrational fear part is a lot more difficult. But no, over time, there's way more people that come up to us and say they have a crested gecko or have a ball python or stuff like that for your mainstream pet things. But as far as like acceptance, we never really struggled with that other than a lot of the religious folks. We're south of Chicago, and Chicago historically was a very segregated city as far as ethnic groups, and a lot of those were based in church parishes and that kind of thing. And so a lot of their like street festivals or block parties or stuff like that are also related to the church for that area or what have you. And so we ended up, a lot of the city things that we went to, or this village or something like that, some started in the church or at a summer picnic or something. And so we would struggle with that part quite a bit. But for us, the easy way to overcome that was we were teaching your kids. And so even people that had hardcore convictions about those things, when they saw that their kids were into it and their kids were learning and it was safe, and we're not like a roadside dude with a gator who pokes it with a stick. Like we're educated people who are genuinely teaching. And then have all the state requirements and all the fancy papers or whatever, that really cuts that down. Like that adult might not participate, but nowadays they'll rarely prevent their kids from participating. When we first started like 10 years ago, and definitely when I was in school, like I had people would like pull their kid's hand and cross the street, like don't go by those people. Like we don't go by snakes. Like don't do that. That has really gone by the wayside. There are still people who are scared, and they won't participate, but they'll stand back and let their kids. Or the flip to that, like Teresa, her big start to it was she wanted the kids to because she was scared. And we do see a lot of that where, hey, mom's not cool, or yeah, dad's not really in for spiders, but yeah, if you guys want to talk to Mr. Bill, Teresa will help you, talk. They got kids, talk to the kids. They're they're very encouraging, even if they don't want to. And that's been a really big change in probably like the last 5 years. COVID messed up a lot of stuff, but it did for everybody. But it's definitely changed for the large public events. Like when we go to things like the Comic-Con, where it's just thousands and thousands of people, we ended up becoming kind of an event in that event. And it generated enough interest in that way. And a lot of those were, you know, I don't really know, my friend's super into it, so I want to be with them. And, you know, the just kind of a little bit of peer pressure, but not necessarily in a negative way. You know, they were just there to support their buddy, or their kid wanted to go, or whatever. And so, yeah, that's definitely going in a positive direction, at least in the Midwest. That really depends on where you live. Here in Illinois, there are permits and insurance processes, and like for libraries, you have to be on a list to be an asset that libraries could use. In Illinois, when you teach with a special use animal, which is any kind of venomous or a crocodilian, they actually put it in the law, a bona fide educational demonstration at an institution. And then you have to have a letter proving that. And you have a minimum number a year you have to do. And they track all of that. And that's part of your permitting process. And so it's just doing the right thing, doing it the right way. On the education side, that honestly is what legitimizes you, which is kind of unfortunate, because even at a school or a library or we've done some major institutions and museums and like nationally recognized facilities, they may not be educated enough to know if you aren't telling the truth about your animals. Like if you said an incorrect fact about a Boiga cyanea, they wouldn't know that you were wrong. And so it really is incumbent on you to be that educated and able to accurately speak about the things that you're trying to teach. But on the legitimizing its side is the paperwork, is the insurance, doing what your state or county or town or what have you. We support USARK. Teresa and I are huge on it. We help out whenever we can with them, raising money and different things like that. And a lot of the things that they do are fighting laws, which I agree with when I feel that those laws overstep, like most folks do. The difference is the current laws in my state, I follow all of them all the time, even the ones I think are stupid. It doesn't matter. I literally just texted our state herpetologist and I emailed him the other day talking about Slowinski rat snakes. Our state does not recognize subspecies. He's the state herpetologist. He wrote our herptile code in 2015. I've had a bunch of conversations with him. He's awesome. But our state doesn't recognize subspecies. And in our state, the emery, or like the Great Plains rat snake, is an endangered species. And so montane, thorn scrub, slowint, they don't care. It's in the MRI complex, and they have not adjusted our herptile code to match current taxonomic literature. That's it. And so if I get one, I will have to amend my permit and add it. And he's cool. He's, here's the link, here's how you amend it. And I know that stuff. We have our permits, we're cool. They come inspect us. They, he called, hey, I'm in the area. I want to check out how you're doing with the gators, see your stuff, X, Y, and Z. Yeah, man, see you after lunch or whatever, whatever worked. And then we figured it out. He come out and hung out. You have to. You have to follow all of the rules all the time. It's doubly important, in my opinion, for us, because people already don't like our stuff. It's slimy and gross, and snakes and spiders are scary, and you're some freak with a beard and tattoos and a python, and you are already fighting that. You are already fighting a stigma. So when your state or your town or what have you has these rules, then you're that guy or that person, and you broke the rules. You're screwed. You'll never come back from that. They already had a reason to not like you because you're gross, slimy snakes, and then you broke a law or you broke an ordinance or what have you. It isn't worth it, in my opinion. And so it's, for us, when we are working at an institution or working at an educational facility, it's our level of education and presentation that legitimizes what we do. Teresa didn't really come up as a reptile nerd, so she studies. She had flashcards at one point, and she would read before shows. She texts me stuff like, hey, I heard you on a podcast talking about some literature thing. Did something change? When you messaged the Ipers about Australia, like what was going on? Like, she studies for her job, which her second job is presenting reptiles to people. It's her hobby. She likes to build enclosures and take care of stuff, but she's not a nerd like me. She's not going to sit down and read the more complete carpet python. She just isn't. So, hey, we got a poster from Dr. Julander. What's going on? Did something like... And then I explained to her, hey, this is, what his poster said, this is book, blah, blah, blah. And then she passes that information on and is, oh, well, this is a new thing that I learned. And she's genuinely teaching because she's passing on the most current information available to her. Whereas somebody on my end, like I'm doing the same thing, but I'm going to read. I just got Offenberg's book on the Bengal monitor. I'm going to read the whole thing. And then it's like being in school, like the critical thinking questions in the book. Now I can infer things. I can talk to my other monitor friends and just have more in-depth conversations. And so your presentation and accuracy becomes much more important based on your audience. Whereas when I'm just doing a birthday party with kids, it's safety. And I hold the head of the boa and we'll put it on your shoulders and take a picture for your mom. And, I don't just hand you a gator. Like, I wrap the mouth how I'm supposed to. I control the thing. I help you hold the feet so the claws don't get you. And it's way more about your personal interaction as opposed to your necessary education level, right? Because elementary school kids aren't going to really understand when you start talking about ectotherms and endotherms or something of that nature. And so you need to dumb it down, which sounds negative, but that's honest, right? And so then it's more about, like, we wear polos. I wear a collared shirt when I present. It's clean. It's nice. Tuck your shirt in. Wear shoes that aren't dirty. Like, just stuff like that. Don't look like the dude who just pulled the frog out of the swamp to show a kid. Like, don't be a weirdo. You have to have some kind of social decorum. And that's way more important in small personal settings. They're still very separate, in my opinion. I think the invert and amphibian and small desk pet, set it up nice and just look at it. It's like a fish tank, but cooler, that kind of crowd. They exploded during COVID. Plant podcasts, plant shows, became a huge thing because you were stuck at home and you were remote working and you wanted to make your space nice and all of these things. And you can do that with reptiles and amphibians, and it's possible. It's usually pretty expensive. You can set up automated systems and like a dart frog tank doesn't have to be very big, but you got to learn about plants, and then you got to buy a lot of equipment, and to do it easily costs a lot of money. You can do it simply, but then you need to be a little more educated, a little more dedicated on time, a little more skilled to overcome not using expensive, nice equipment. The invertebrate hobby is totally different. You can, not necessarily everyone agrees with it, but you can basically set tarantulas up in any plastic container with cross ventilation and a hide, and they don't really care. They're an incredibly simple animal. And they're small size. They're literally a desk pet. You can literally set one on your desk and be good. You get a fossorial tarantula. It's just a box of dirt. You feed it once a week, and it will be happy for the next 20 years, and it won't care. You'll only ever see some cool blue feet. It will have a wonderful life as far as a fossorial tarantula is concerned. And so I think their ease of care has really been brought to people's attention. These tiny pets in the invertebrate trade are becoming incredibly popular because I didn't want to spend a ton of money because I wasn't totally sure and I didn't have a ton of space. I live in an apartment or whatever. I can put this on my desk, put it on my shelf. They're beautiful. You get purple ones and pink ones and crazy different things. Most of, if not all of the really pretty, beautiful ones are old worlds. So you don't touch them. They just set them up and they look nice. A lot of them like to live in burrows. So it's literally a pet hole in the dirt. And then you get the fun of, I saw it come out. I finally got a picture. It builds some anticipation. But on the tarantula side, it's also that we've gotten good at breeding a lot of them, and we can still import some. And in Europe, they're killing it for breeding. They do a much better job than us for quite a few species, and we're still able to import them. And so that's a pretty big deal. It's also a really big deal that, in comparison to reptiles, at least, when you're importing those animals, you're actually importing captive bred stuff. Whereas you can import captive bred stuff from Europe for reptiles as well, but it's usually really expensive. It's going to be a very specific species. Your average pet keeper probably is not interested in those species, and if they are, they might be hesitant to spend that kind of money. And so it's usually more dedicated hobbyists on the reptile and amphibian side that are willing to do captive bred imports. And on the pet side, like, they actually are an awesome pet. People obviously struggle with the fear portion of it. But as a pet owner, and then for me, like having a facility and having like 24 of them, it's simple. I can rotate through. I can show 3 or 4 kinds of Brachypelma, 3 or 4 kinds of Grammostola. It's a fat, fuzzy spider, brown, black, red, some combination of that. And kids love a giant fuzzball spider. They're super chill. They don't care. And then I can have an enclosure with a purple one and show you that, and you'll think it's pretty. Well, and that's, it's just like our hobby here, just like the amphibian hobby. The diversity is astounding. Diversity in everything, from looks to habitat to the cool stuff they do. If you want to watch a trapdoor spider build something, or see an arboreal, how they maneuver, and like it is just as in depth as our side of the hobby with reptiles, and it normally is in a smaller package. And so you're able to get all the things that we enjoy, a lot of us enjoy in the reptiles, but it fits on a shelf. I don't make fun of what they like. I'm kind of different in that I don't have an Australian collection, or I'm not a gecko guy. I like everything. And I utilize a huge variety of things to teach. Even if I wasn't using things to teach, I actually enjoy having a diverse collection. I'm like everybody, some stuff is cooler to me than other stuff, but I find interest in pretty much everything. On the hobby side, like pretty much everybody who watches this or listens to it is probably a reptile nerd already. Like, if your kid wakes up and wants a leopard gecko, just a leopard gecko with an orange tail, a banana ball, or whatever, like just some plain old pet, don't make fun of it. Set it up, help, foster their interest. And a big thing for my kids was I didn't make them do that stuff. My oldest daughter was really into helping with shows because she likes to hang out with little kids. She likes to babysit and do things like that. And she loved ball pythons. They're super pretty. They have a million different colors. She thought it was the coolest thing in the world. We live pretty close to NARBC in Tinley Park, so we go there every year, and she would see just the kaleidoscope of ball pythons on a table. She thought it was the coolest thing ever. And we walked around and window shot ball pythons. I hung out with all these people that breed them, and hey, can she hold that or check it out? And they're all cool. Like, yeah, man, it's a little kid, come on. And I just let her do her thing. She got a banana ball. She thought it was the greatest thing ever. We have a couple of normal balls that we used to teach with. She loves those. And now she's 16. She has a job and a car and other stuff and other interests, and and she likes it, but she doesn't really like doing the shows because she's a teenager. So now all those little kids are kind of annoying. And she likes to do shows with the family because she wants to go to a cider festival with us, and then we go eat lunch afterward or whatever. But her interest is just different. My son is super into turtles, and I didn't try to like make him be into something different. It just isn't a forced kind of thing, I suppose. And the flip is true as well, where if your son or daughter is into it, the harder you push against it, as they go into teens, it's going to be like most teens, right? They're going to want to do it because you don't want to do it. It's very, they're counterculture teens. Everybody was, right? But when they're young, it's just an openness, right? Like, I don't care. Yeah, you want to, my kids like to kayak or whatever, like, that's cool. So you would do that, or you like invertebrates. Okay, it's just more of an acceptance and openness thing, I suppose. But yeah, if you're already a reptile nerd or you're already into this, in my opinion, as a parent, don't make them be into it, because they're not gonna.
If they are, cool. If they're not, it was your hobby to start with, so do your hobby. If you are not a reptile person or a bug person or whatever, and you somehow found these questions, you also don't have to necessarily own a pet. Go to the zoo more often. Go to like NARBC and just wander around, check everything out. It will kind of suck if they're younger. They might have a tantrum or be upset. Like, don't buy anything. Come hang out at the rescue table where we're at, or come hang out at the t-shirt table where people are at, and like, just hang out. Like, be involved in the hobby, but don't own a pet. That maybe your kid is in elementary school. You want to wait until they're 12, 13, 14, 15 years old and can kind of, do the water, feed it, take chores. When they're really young, it's going to be your pet. And so if that's not something you're down for, you can bring really young kids to a giant show. People will let them hold a crested gecko. People will let them hold a ball python. You can do all the fun stuff. Then just go home. There's a million things you can do. Herpetological societies, all these different zoos. There's a ton of different stuff that you can be actively involved in this and not own one.